The egg had been there longer than the settlement. Before the first human family built a house on the mountain, before the roads were cut and the water pipes were laid, a dragon had chosen that cave. Her name was Sarath. She was old beyond any record, and she was the last of everything she had ever been. Nobody knew how she had survived this long. Most people in the galaxy believed dragons were gone stories in old books, bones in museums. But Sarath had lived in the cold dark of that mountain, and she had waited, and one day she had laid an egg. She did not know why she had the strength to do it. Maybe she had simply decided that the world did not deserve to lose something so rare without a fight. The humans in the settlement below did not bother her. That was why she had chosen the mountain. She had watched them for years before she let them know she was there. They were loud sometimes and careless sometimes, but they did not come into the cave, and they did not send soldiers, and they did not build fences. They just lived. One of them, a girl named Nora, had found the cave by accident when she was 7 years old. She had dropped her ball, chased it, and suddenly there was a dragon in front of her. Nora had not run. She had looked at Sarath for a long moment and said, "You're very big." Then she had picked up her ball and gone home for dinner. She came back the next morning. Nora was 9 now, and she visited every day. She talked to the egg more than she talked to Sarath. She would sit beside it and sing a small, tuneless song she had made up herself. The egg never moved, but Sarath noticed that when Nora sang, the shell seemed warmer. Nora's father, Dale, knew about the visits. He was a quiet man, wide in the shoulders, with hands that had spent 20 years moving cargo through deep space. He had come to the settlement after his wife died, looking for a slower life. He trusted his daughter's judgment. She had always had good instincts. The day the Droon ship came, Nora was already in the cave. She heard it before she saw it, a low hum from above, like a held note that wouldn't stop. Then light flooded the cave entrance, sharp and white, and 6 figures walked in wearing gray armor that covered them head to toe. The Droon were tall and thin, with wide flat faces and black eyes. They said nothing to Nora. They did not appear to see her as a problem. One of them raised a device and pointed it at Sarath. The dragon made a sound Nora had never heard from her. It was not a roar. It was smaller than that, like something being turned off. Sarath dropped. Her body hit the stone floor and she lay still, her breathing shallow and strange, her eyes half open. The Droon soldiers moved to the egg quickly. They had a container already built for it. They placed the egg inside with careful, practiced hands, sealed the lid, and carried it out. One of them glanced at Nora on the way past, just a glance. Then they were gone. The hum rose again, faded. Nora sat in the dark cave for a long time. Sarath was breathing, but barely. The spot where the egg had been was just cold rock. Dale found his daughter sitting at the cave entrance when the sun was already low. She was not crying. She was past that. She looked up at him with a face he had never seen on her before, and she said, "They took it, Papa. They took the baby." Dale sat down next to her. He did not say anything for a while. Then he went inside the cave. Sarath's eye found him. She tried to lift her head and failed. He knelt beside her and she spoke, barely, in a voice like rock grinding against rock. "The egg heard her voice first," Sarath said. "Before anything else, before me, it knows her." Dale stayed with the dragon until her breathing steadied. Then he walked his daughter home, put her to bed, sat in the kitchen, and looked at the wall for a while. He knew about the Droon. Everyone did. They had 11 worlds. They had laws that covered everything. They had a doctrine called the Life Preservation Compact, and under that doctrine they could claim any rare living thing in the galaxy and place it under their permanent protection. They did not ask permission. They did not need to. No government had ever successfully challenged them, and no individual had ever tried. Dale got up and went to his room. He pulled an old bag from under the bed. He opened his drawer and looked at his travel documents. Then he looked at the photograph on the wall, Nora and his wife, both laughing from years ago, and he thought about what his daughter had said. They took the baby. He started packing. 3 days later, Dale was on a transport heading away from the mountain. He had told Nora he was going to get the egg back. She had looked at him with eyes that were tired and serious and said, "Okay." Then she had taught him the song, the small, tuneless one she sang to the egg each morning. She made him practice it twice until he had it right. He was not a good singer, but she said that didn't matter. "It knows the feeling," she told him, "not the sound." He did not tell anyone else he was going. The nearest trade hub was a place called Station Braymark, a wide, noisy ring of metal that smelled like fuel and cooked food and too many species in one place. Dale had stopped there plenty of times back when he was hauling freight. He still knew people. His old partner, a man named Das, ran a shipping office near the lower dock. Das was heavier than Dale remembered, and he had more gray in his hair, but his eyes were still sharp. Dale sat down across from him and said, "I need to know where the Droon keep biological acquisitions." Das put his drink down slowly. "Why?" "They took something from my mountain." Das was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "There's a place on Druven Prime, their homeworld. It's called the Vault of Living Relics. That's where anything important goes." He leaned forward. "Dale, no one goes to Druven Prime without an invitation. They have 3 orbital defense layers. They don't allow outside ships to land. They do not negotiate with non-Droon species. I mean that literally. It is written into their law that they have no obligation to respond." "How do I get there?" "You can get to the border, that's it. They'll turn you around." Dale nodded. "What's the fastest route?" Das stared at him. "Did you hear what I said?" "I heard." "Dale, they are an 11-world empire. You are one person." "I know." "You'll get turned around at the border, and that will be the end of it." Dale stood up and paid for the drinks. "Book me a passage toward Droon space, whatever's leaving soonest." Das opened his mouth, closed it, and then turned to his screen. He muttered something under his breath that Dale did not catch. On the transport, Dale found a seat near the back. The ship carried about 40 passengers, a mix of species, none of them Droon. A trader from the Thurv system sat beside him for a while. A talkative man named Olin with 4 arms, and a habit of talking with all of them at once. When Olin heard where Dale was heading, he went still. "Druven Prime," he repeated. "Yes." "You are human." "Yes." "They will not let you land. They will not answer your messages. They will not acknowledge that you exist as a legal entity. Human species have no diplomatic standing in Droon space." "I know all of that," Dale said. Olin looked at him for a moment. "Then why are you going?" Dale thought about Nora teaching him the song, her small hands showing him the rhythm, patient and serious. "My daughter cried for 3 nights," he said. "That's enough reason." Olin had nothing to say to that. He moved to another seat after a while, not unkindly, just the way someone moves when they have run out of words. At the Droon border, the automatic patrol system hailed the transport. A flat, translated voice came through the speakers and announced that no human passengers would be granted passage into Droon-controlled space and that the transport would need to redirect. Dale asked the communications officer if he could send a personal response. The officer, a Thurvian who looked deeply uncomfortable, said he supposed that was allowed. Dale recorded his message. He kept it short. He said his name. He said he was a father. He said that a dragon named Sarath had chosen his daughter to be the first voice the last dragon egg ever heard, and that the egg had been taken and that he would like it returned. He did not shout. He did not threaten. He spoke the way he would speak to someone reasonable, even if he had no evidence they were. He sent it to every address Das had given him for Droon diplomatic channels. Then he sat back and waited. He was still in holding orbit when the transport's communications screen lit up with a response. Not from a diplomat, not from the council, but from the Border Patrol station itself, telling him his ship was being held pending a review. Not turned away, held. Dale looked out the small window at the wide dark between the stars, and he thought that held was different from refused. Held meant someone was thinking about it. He was willing to wait. Nobody on Druven Prime had planned to let him land. The message Dale sent was flagged twice, first as irrelevant, then as unusual. The second flag was what mattered. A low-ranking communications officer named Barrett, whose job was to sort and discard incoming non-drone transmissions, listened to the message 4 times before he passed it up the chain. He did not pass it because it was important. He passed it because he could not figure out what category it belonged in. A human had spoken about a dragon, a child, a song, no threats, no demands written in legal language, just a father explaining something. In the drone system, things that had no category made people nervous. The message moved up 2 levels and then 3 more, and it arrived eventually at the desk of a cultural archivist named Sarath, who worked in the lower wing of the Vault of Living Relics. Sarath's job was to document the behavior of acquired species. She had been watching the dragon egg for 4 days and writing down that it was unresponsive. She listened to the message once and then sat very still for a while. The problem, the one she could not write around, was the Life Preservation Compact itself. Section 12. She knew it well. She had cited it in reports before. It said very clearly that when an acquired life form failed to respond to standard bonding conditions, the overseeing body was required to attempt alternative bonding stimuli before declaring the specimen in decline. The egg had failed to respond to every drone bonding condition for 4 days. The man on the recording was, technically, an alternative bonding stimulus. The compact required them to try him. This was not what anyone wanted her to conclude. She knew that. When she brought it to her supervisor, he looked at her like she had suggested something embarrassing. He told her to file it and move on. She filed it. Then, because she had a habit of believing that records should be accurate, she forwarded it to the public archive. She did not think it would do much. It did more than she expected. By the time the council ordered it removed, 11,000 drone citizens had accessed the file. This was not a protest. The drone were not the type to protest. But they were a species that took life doctrine seriously. The discussion spread through private message threads and family conversations, and the core of it was always the same. If the egg had already chosen a voice, and that voice belonged to a human child, what did the compact actually say about that? It said try. Elder Maran was the oldest member of the council. He had been on it for 60 years. He had seen 11 species fail to challenge drone authority and 3 fail to survive the attempt. He was not moved by sentiment, but he was, above all things, a man who followed the compact. He had built his life on it. He authorized a single landing permit, 1 vessel, 1 passenger. It was not an invitation. It was not recognition. It was permission to attempt alternative bonding stimuli, logged under Section 12 and nothing else. He told his assistant to make that very clear. The human was not a guest. He was a procedure. Dale's transport received the coordinates 6 hours later. He landed on Druven Prime in the early morning by local time. The capital city rose around the landing pad in tall white spires, carved with patterns that covered every surface. It was the most ordered place Dale had ever seen. Everything seemed to be in exactly the right position. Nothing was out of place. 6 armored drone guards were waiting for him. Dale stepped off the ramp with his bag over one shoulder. The guards moved toward him in a way that was not quite threatening, but was also not welcoming. The lead guard was nearly a full head taller than him. Dale looked around at the city, then he looked at the guard. "Could you point me toward whoever has the egg?" he asked. The guard stared at him. In the guard's entire career, no one had ever been brought before the council who was not shaking by the time they landed. Some could not speak at all. Others spoke too fast, using too many words, trying to fill the silence with justifications. This man was asking for directions. The guard turned and began walking. Dale followed. The council chamber was large enough to make most beings feel small. That was the point of it. The ceiling was high, the walls were distant, and every surface was polished to a shine that caught the light and threw it back. The 5 council members sat at an elevated bench that required visitors to look upward to address them. Dale did not look particularly bothered by any of this. High Arbiter Lun was at the center. He was older than he looked, which was already old, and he had the practiced stillness of someone who had made thousands of decisions without losing sleep over any of them. He led his chief officer, read the formal declaration aloud. It took several minutes. It covered the Life Preservation Compact, the Droon Mandate of Stewardship, the legal classification of dragon eggs as non-sovereign life forms, and the complete absence of any human legal standing in Droon jurisdiction. Dale waited for all of it to finish. Then he said, "Has the egg hatched yet?" Silence. Lun looked at him. "No." "Has it responded to anything you've done?" A pause. "That is not relevant to." "Has it moved, made any sound, reacted to heat, light, any of your bonding tests?" Another pause, longer this time. "No," Lun said. Dale nodded slowly. "I'd like to see it." "You are not here to make requests." "I understand that." Dale was not angry. He was not performing patience either. He was just steady. "Your own compact, Section 12, says if an acquired life form doesn't respond to standard bonding conditions, you have to try alternatives. I'm an alternative. That's why you let me land. I'm not asking for a favor. I'm asking you to follow your own rules." The room was very quiet. Sareth was standing near the back wall, assigned as translator and observer. She watched the High Arbiter's face and saw something she had not expected to see there. Not anger, evaluation. Lun spoke quietly to the scholar beside him. The scholar looked at a document. He nodded. "You will be taken to the vault," Lun said. "You will not touch the egg. You will not attempt to remove it. If there is no response in 30 minutes, you will be escorted back to your ship, and this matter will be closed." Dale said, "Fair enough." The Vault of Living Relics was a long walk through cool, dim corridors. Cases lined every wall, some small, some enormous, each containing something that the galaxy had nearly lost. Dale did not look at them much. He was thinking about the song. The egg was in a chamber at the end of the main hall, resting on a temperature-controlled stand, surrounded by instruments he did not recognize. It was about the size of a large watermelon. The shell was dark, with faint patterns on the surface that shifted when the light changed. Dale sat down on the floor next to the stand, cross-legged like Nora did. He did not reach for the egg, he just sat close to it. Then he started to sing. It was quiet. It was not good singing. It was the small, tuneless song his daughter had taught him in the kitchen, the one she had made up herself, the one she sang every morning while sitting in a cold cave because she loved something that hadn't been born yet. For 10 seconds, nothing happened. Then the egg moved. It was a small movement, a slight shift, a settling. Then the shell pulsed once, deep in its center, and a sound came from it, low and resonant, the same tone in the same rhythm as if the egg was answering. Behind the observation window, nobody spoke. One of the Droon scientists pressed closer to the glass. Sareth stopped writing. The 2 guards by the door looked at each other. Lun stood at the window with his hands folded behind his back and watched a dragon egg respond to a human man singing a child's lullaby. He stood there for a long time. Then he turned and told everyone to leave the room except Dale and 2 of the senior scholars. He walked in himself. He sat down across from Dale. The egg was still making its low sound, slow and steady, like breathing. Lun looked at the human in front of him, not at the egg, at Dale. "Tell me," he said, and his voice was different now. Not the voice of a declaration, just a voice. "What is it your daughter did?" Dale looked at the High Arbiter for a moment. Then he leaned back slightly and said, "She didn't do anything on purpose. She just showed up." Lun waited. She found the cave by accident. She wasn't looking for a dragon. She wasn't trying to bond with the egg or document it or protect it. She just thought it was interesting, so she came back the next day, and the day after that. Dale looked at the egg beside him. She sang to it because she felt like it. She talked to it because she had things to say. That was it. "She had no goal," Lun said. "No." Lun was quiet for a moment. In Droon culture, everything had a goal. Stewardship had a goal. Protection had a goal. The entire compact was a framework of goals. A being that acted without one was either broken or very young. Then how did it bond to her? "I don't think bonding works the way you think it does," Dale said. He was not being unkind. He was just saying what seemed true. It didn't bond to her because she tried hard or did everything right. It bonded to her because she kept coming back for no reason except that she wanted to. The egg felt that. Whatever it is that eggs feel. One of the scholars by the wall began writing quickly. Lun looked at the egg. "We have preserved 79 species in this vault. We have prevented extinction 11 times. We have followed the compact without error for 200 years. "I believe that," Dale said. "And you are telling me that what we did was wrong." Dale took a breath. "I'm telling you that there's a difference between preserving something and caring about it. You can do one without the other, but the egg knows which one it got." Sarath, standing in the far corner, stopped pretending to take notes. She was just listening now. Lun was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Open a communication link. Connect to the origin settlement on Druven." One of the scholars looked surprised but moved to comply. It took a few minutes. Then a screen on the wall lit up, and Nora's face appeared, small, tired, eyes red at the edges. She looked at the screen, and then she looked past her father at the egg beside him. Her whole face changed. She leaned close to her communicator and she sang the song, right there quietly, without being asked. The egg's response was immediate. The tone it had been making since Dale started singing became louder, and it pulsed again, twice, then 3 times. The instruments in the room began recording faster. The scholar at the back stopped writing entirely and just stared. Then another voice came through the communicator from behind Nora, slow, heavy, like stone and smoke. "Soreth." The dragon spoke in her own language at first, and Sarath, who had studied extinct species dialects her whole career, understood pieces of it. Then Sorath switched, deliberately, to a language the translator could carry. She spoke to the council. She said she had chosen the mountain settlement 20 years ago because of the humans who lived there. Not because they were strong, but because they did not come for things that were not theirs. She said she had watched Nora for 2 years before letting the child into the cave. She had tested her. She had been cold and distant and unresponsive. And the child had kept coming anyway, with no expectation of anything in return. She said the egg did not choose randomly. It felt what was near it. And what was near it, for the most important months of its forming, was a child who loved it for free. Soreth said, "I did not hide the egg on that mountain by accident. I put it where I knew it would be loved. Your council reached in and took it from the only place it was ever safe." The chamber was completely silent. Lun had not moved for several minutes. His face was very still. He was the kind of man who had spent decades deciding things, and Dale could see that he was deciding something now, not quickly, but completely. Finally, Lun looked at his council members on the other side of the room. 3 were present in person. 2 more were connected remotely. He looked at each of them in turn. Then he said, quietly and without ceremony, "Return the egg." One of the remote members began to object. Lun spoke over her. The compact requires us to protect life. It does not define life as property. We have been conflating the two for a very long time. Return the egg." The room took a breath. Sarath closed her notepad. For the first time in the 4 days she had been watching the unresponsive egg, she felt like something had been correctly recorded. 2 days passed before the egg was ready to travel. The Droon prepared the transport container with care, the same one they had used to take it, resealed and rewarmed to the exact temperature the instrument said the egg preferred. Nobody argued about the decision after Lund made it. 2 council members recorded their formal objection, and that was the end of it. Sarath was assigned as observer for the transfer. This was framed as a scholarly role, documenting the first verified dragon imprinting event in 3 centuries. But Lund told her quietly before she left that he hoped she would stay for the hatching. She said she would. The day Dale left, Lund found him at the landing pad. He did not say much. He was not the kind of person who said much outside of formal settings, and this was not a formal setting. He stood beside Dale for a moment and looked at the container. "We have preserved many things," Lund said. "I have spent my life on it. I believed it was enough." He stopped there for a moment. "I no longer believe it was enough." Dale did not say, "I told you so." He did not say anything grand. He just said, "You get to do something about that now," and picked up the container and walked to his ship. The journey home took 8 days. Dale kept the container closed. At night he talked to the egg the way Nora had taught him, just talked, about whatever came into his head. The mountain, the way the snow came down in winter like it had somewhere to be, the sound the valley made at dawn when the birds started up and the fog was still low. He did not know if it could hear him. He talked anyway. Nora was waiting at the edge of the settlement when the ship landed. She had not been told exactly when to expect him. She had just been waiting. Dale walked down the ramp and she looked at the container in his arms, and she did not hug him first. She put her hands on the container and went still, listening. Then she looked up. Her eyes were full. "It's okay," she said. "It's okay, it remembers." They carried the egg to the mountain together. Sarath walked behind them, quiet and watchful. The cave was cold when they arrived. Sarath was on the far side, lying against the wall. She had barely moved in the days Dale was gone. The settlement's doctor had checked on her twice and said she was stable but very tired, the kind of tired that is close to done. When they brought the egg in, Sarath opened her eyes. She made no sound. She did not move toward it. She just watched as Nora set the container down and opened the seal and lifted the egg out with both hands and placed it gently on the stone floor beside her. Sarath lowered her head until her chin was resting on the ground, her face next to the egg. She breathed out slowly. 3 days passed. On the morning of the 3rd day, Nora was sitting cross-legged beside the egg when it cracked. It was not a dramatic crack. It was a small one near the top, and it took hours for the rest to follow. Dale sat by the cave entrance. Sarath sat beside him, her notebook open but mostly untouched. They could hear Nora inside, talking softly to the egg the way she always had. When the shell finally gave way and the hatchling came out, it made one sound. A low note, the same tone the egg had made in the vault when Dale sang, when Nora's voice came through the communicator. The same note, held steady, directed at nothing and everything at once. It looked at Sarath first. Then it turned and found Nora's hands, and it pressed its head against them, and it went still. Sarath let out a long breath. She closed her eyes. Sarath was not writing. She had stopped some time ago. She was just sitting with her hands in her lap, watching the light in the cave and the small dragon and the child, and the father at the entrance who had crossed 11 world borders with a bag on his shoulder and a child's song in his head. After a while she said, "The council will ask me what you had that we didn't. What should I tell them?" Dale watched his daughter's shadow on the cave wall, small hands moving, and the hatchling pressing forward to meet her. He said, "Tell them we didn't go to take something. We want to give something back." Sarath looked at that for a moment. Then she picked up her pen and wrote it down. Outside, the mountain was quiet. The valley below caught the morning light the way it always did, slow and even, like it was in no hurry and never had been. The dragon breathed. The child sang. The father sat at the edge of the cave and let the warmth of it reach him. It was enough.